Welcome. I am Andrea Hable, President of the League of Women Voters of the Woodbury Cottage Grove area. The purpose of the League, national, state, and local, is to empower voters and defend democracy. For more than 100 years, the League of Women Voters has been a trusted source of nonpartisan voter registration and education, and a long-standing witness to Minnesota's proud tradition of voter access and election integrity. The League's mission is to encourage informed and active participation of citizens in government, work to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influence public policy through education and advocacy. The League strengthens our communities by promoting voter registration, conducting candidate forums, and informing voters on public policy through education. We invite you to visit our website, lwvmn.org, to learn about the statutes, best practices, and safeguards associated with Minnesota elections. And you can follow the link on the website to Vote 411 for a one-stop shop for all your election needs, personalized to you, including a voter's guide. We hope all of our candidates here have submitted their information for the Vote 411 voter's guide. And now I'll turn it over to Roger Green, who is moderating today.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters Minnesota and our local leagues conduct these candidate forums to provide the public with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss the issues that are important to members of the public. The League is a nonpartisan organization that does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in each forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. LWV Minnesota and our local leagues post complete, unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan or political purposes. The candidates with us tonight for Minnesota House District 41A include Wayne Johnson and Lucia Wroblewski. The candidate for House District 41B, Tom Dippel, chose not to attend, and 41B candidate Jen Fox has a conflict with the City Council meeting. Each has submitted a statement to share. Candidate Tom Dippel's statement: I am running to serve and sacrifice for the community I grew up in. Rather than attend this forum, I am out in the neighborhood doing my best to meet every one of you and listen to your concerns firsthand. As a 15-year business owner, husband, school board chair, and father of 6 children, I have the experience to serve you well at the Capitol. With high inflation, property taxes rising, healthcare costs rising, poor water quality, and decreasing academic test scores, we need new leadership and restored balance in Minnesota. The trifecta of total Democratic control at the Capitol has led to failed policies, and history shows these policies will not work. Minnesotans are tired of this and they want change, not another massive increase in the state budget while their personal budgets shrink. I will work hard to make life more affordable, cut property taxes, ensure we have clean drinking water, support women's health care at all levels, and promote healthy stewardship of our natural resources. We live in a beautiful state that is worth fighting for. Vote Tom Dippel for fresh, balanced leadership. Candidate Jen Fox's statement: tonight, I am serving in my current elected position at Hastings City Hall as City Council member, a role that is incredibly important to me and something I'm very proud to do. I wish I could be here to answer your questions and share my perspectives on policy. However, my community already believes I am a strong representative and I must serve in that role today. As a small business owner, a City Council member, and someone who has studied public policy extensively, I am thrilled for the opportunity to represent our community at the state capitol. I will fight for state support of clean drinking water, provide strong funding for public school teachers, and work with local governments to improve our economy. I care deeply about the prosperity of this community and am determined to advocate for your needs at the legislature. Through my service in Hastings, I know that the issues the District 41B faces are greater than what we as local governments can resolve alone. We need support at the state capitol now more than ever. Please follow our campaign on social media and visit our website to find our policy beliefs and platform. And feel free to support Jen Fox for House through door knocking and donating by going to jenfoxforhouse.com. For those candidates who are on hand tonight, each will be asked to provide a 1-minute opening statement. We will go in alphabetical order for opening statements, which means candidate Wayne Johnson will go first. The reverse order will be used for closing statements, allowing candidate Lucia Wroblewski to go first. With each question, the order of response will be reversed. Candidates will have 1 minute to answer questions and 30 seconds for any rebuttal. Our timekeepers tonight are League of Women Voter Volunteers Ellie Anderson and Heather Mockler. They will hold up signs to indicate 30 seconds remaining, then 15 seconds remaining, and finally stop. The questions have been submitted by voters to the League email or during voter service events in the community. The viewing audience can submit questions by calling or texting the number displayed on the screen during the forum. We will not have time to ask all questions submitted, and League volunteers will decide which questions will be presented in order to address a variety of topics. At the finish, candidates will each have 1 minute for a closing statement. This forum is being live streamed and broadcast by the South Washington County Telecommunications Commission on Comcast Channel 18, HD 859. The forum is being recorded and can be viewed until Election Day on the SWCTC website and on the Woodbury Cottage Grove Area League of Women Voters website. Let us begin. First, with the 1 minute opening statement, is candidate Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the League of Women Voters Candidate Forum. I am Wayne Johnson, and I am the Republican candidate for Minnesota House in District 41A. Minnesota is at a very important crossroads. Math and reading scores for students are getting worse and show no signs of change despite increased spending by the DFL trifecta. Middle income and lower income Minnesotans continue to be hit with the regressive taxes in order to pay for the DFL agenda. Owning a home is getting harder and harder to achieve. We need to bring balance back to St. Paul to start finding ways to turn Minnesota around and start moving forward. Without the balance, Minnesota will become harder and harder for people to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for candidate Wroblewski.
I first want to thank the League for this opportunity to introduce myself to the voters. I'm Lucia Wroblewski, and I'm running for State House. I've lived in Afton for nearly 30 years. I'm currently serving as a twice-elected Afton City Council member. Prior to that, I was on the Planning Commission for 4 years. And for 28 and a half years, I proudly served and protected the residents of St. Paul as a cop, most of that time on the east side where I grew up. I'm running because my life has been dedicated to public service, and that's never been more critical to both our state and our nation as it is today. When I get to St. Paul, I will work hard to lower costs for families and seniors, keep our communities and our cops safe, take on the serious PFAS water contamination problem that is threatening the health of our residents, and I'll fight to protect all our individual freedoms, including the freedom for women to make decisions about their own bodies and their own health care, and the freedom to be who you are and to love who you love. I've served and protected the communities I've been part of my entire life, and I'll fiercely serve and protect all of the residents of 41A. Thank you.
Thank you both for the opening statements. Our first question. If elected, you will be representing your community in the House of Representatives. How will you balance the needs of your constituents with those outside of your district? What local concerns will you keep in mind? First to respond to this question will be candidate Wroblewski.
Well, I don't think that's going to be hard because I think the concerns of the residents of 41A are the concerns of all Minnesotans. I think we have more that unites us than divides us. The particular concerns in 41A that make me lose sleep include the terrible PFAS contamination of our water systems. It's affecting at least half of our district, and we need to deal with it. You know, even in our district, we have public safety concerns. We have a pretty safe communities in 41A, but you know, there's still some crime, and it's a concern for people, and there's nobody better equipped to deal with public safety than a public safety professional, as I am, one who's been endorsed by the Minnesota Police and Peace Officer Association. You know, I'm also very, it's very important to deal with our environment. That's the one thing with 41A. It's a very special district, and we have our open space and preserves, and I'm run out of time, so I'll just end it there.
Thank you. Next, candidate Johnson.
Well, thank you. This is the first position that's going to be a partisan for me. Before it was nonpartisan, so I was used to reaching out to both. Didn't matter what side of the aisle they were, I was working for the community. So when I was serving both on the city and also down in Stillwater for the Board of Commissioners, I was used to reaching out to both sides. I was actually going down to the Capitol, and we did not care who we were talking to, whether they were on the left side or the right side. We were down there for one purpose. So I'm used to working with both sides. That's why people are excited about me going down there to represent them. They know how I do that. Now, as far as working with the outside the community and inside the community, it's something that I've learned. You need to think local, but also think bigger. A lot of times the bigger things will affect us locally, and being able to manage and balance both of them is going to be very important, and I have shown that I've been able to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first question is in the area of budget and finance. The economy is front and center in many people's minds. What strategies would you recommend to address the impact of inflation on Minnesotans? First to respond will be candidate Johnson.
Thank you for the question. You're right. Budget and finances on a lot of people's minds at the door. In fact, we're coming up after the DFL trifecta spent $18 billion and then raised another $10 billion in taxes. We are now looking at another $1.5 billion in deficit coming up, which means the trifecta would increase it by $3 billion taxes and fees. We need to get down there and bring in the balance. You're going to hear that word a lot. Bring balance down, so now we have to start having a conversation, and we can't just raise taxes. We're going to have to look and see if they're needed. In other words, just because you can doesn't mean you should. So we start looking at, is the money still needed where it is being spent, before we start just adding more on. Making sure we have a plan for success, long-term success, and long-term funding before we raise any more taxes. Thank you.
Same question, candidate Wroblewski.
Well, personally, I am a person who's fiscally responsible in my personal life and in my life as a city council member. I think it's very important to balance our budget and also to have a savings and a checking account, something similar to that, and a city account that's there to pay for routine maintenance and also for emergencies. We need to stay within our budget. It's something that's very important to me. I think that the state actually tried to help working families by providing a child tax credit when the times have been so hard, eliminating the tax on Social Security for seniors, for 70% of seniors, and providing free lunches to kids. That benefits every family regardless of their income and their wealth. These are the kind of programs that I support and I will support as a state legislator.
Thank you. Another budget and finance question. In the next biennium, what do you believe should be Minnesota's spending priorities? What should the state do with any surplus? And how should the state resolve a budget deficit? And candidate Wroblewski, please start.
Well, spending priorities. We have massive issues. You know, our cops are short on the street. They're working overtime. Our healthcare workers, we're short of healthcare workers. We need to incentivize. We need to increase the numbers for these people, and we just need to improve these systems. We need to provide public safety and our healthcare systems with enough workers and funding. I'm sorry. I'm struggling here. I need to get my thoughts set. I'll take a pause here. Thank you.
Brady, and also respond to that question, candidate Johnson.
Thank you. Well, the first thing that needs to happen is bring balance down there. So the only answer right now is to raise taxes and fees. If there is a budget issue, we need to raise taxes and fees, and that is putting a burden on citizens in Minnesota. We are not going to have an excess. There's not going to be a surplus, so we don't have to worry about that because we're already going into a deficit. So now we have to figure out what was spent last time that we don't need to keep spending on as we move forward. And that's part of bringing balance in. If we want to start digging into the budget, most of the people down there don't even know what's in the budget because it's so thick and so many things. When you spend $28 billion, you can't even know what's going out the door anymore, and we're seeing that. So we need to really start talking to the different departments, start thinking about why are we spending this, can we afford it, and stop just raising taxes as the only solution for balancing the budget going forward.
Thank you. Another question in the area of education.
Did you want a rebuttal?
Yeah, may I?
Oh,
I had a little
rebuttal,
bit of
sure.
a meltdown here.
Yes, please.
I just wanted to say that we have a $4 billion and $3 billion in a checking and savings account in our state. And that's the way you need to deal with your budgets in case we have cost overruns. And then the other thing is we have to deal with our PFAS issues. We have so many important issues, and we have got to use our state money to deal with these things. With PFAS, it's expanding into all sorts of communities outside 41A. With public safety, with our juvenile criminal justice system. I'll end there.
Thank you. The next question also has to do with education. What should be the legislature's role, if any, in determining school curriculum and what is taught in classrooms throughout the state? And we'll start with candidate Johnson for this one.
Thank you for that question. Education, as I touched in my opening statement, is at a crisis mode place right now. We just had the recent scores come out that reading and math is continuing to go down. We have people at the door that I'm talking to, parents that are paying twice for their kids' education. They're paying through their property taxes and through state taxes, and they're sending them their kids to private school. I think a lot of the decisions need to be brought local. The problem is you start getting down to the state level, you start bringing in a lot of politics, and you start bringing in a lot of lobbyists, and you start bringing in the unions, the Department of Education and the teachers union. It needs to be brought back to local so we can start addressing what's going on. We need to bring in the parents. So I would say less at the state level, back to more of the local level is the answer for fixing our education.
And candidate Wroblewski.
Yeah, our public education system was devastated during the Pawlenty era when they just crashed the budget for public education. That's why we're paying such high property tax rates. And taking away that much money for nearly 30 decades or over 30 decades is devastating to our public education system. You know, the Republicans like vouchers and they like private schools. We need to, instead of defund our public education system, put money back into the public education system. I think we put about over $1 billion back into our education system, and that didn't even get us near to where we have to be to get us to the same level we were at in 2003. So we need more investment in public education, and we need to be inclusive to all our kids, and we need to listen to the teachers as well as the parents for what we need. But teachers are very, very important in this.
Any rebuttal?
Definitely. Again, I don't think the answer to everything is just spend more money. There needs to be a better plan. One of the things that we're hearing about is kids showing back up to school. Why I think they need to bring the decisions being made back local is the fact that the state decided during the pandemic and to tell parents and kids that it's not important to go to school. You don't need to learn. You don't need to go to school to learn. You can stay at home, and now they can't get the kids coming back to school. That's an example of why we need to bring some of that back to local. Thank you.
Any additional rebuttal?
And if I may, the pandemic was a public health crisis, and kids couldn't be in school. And remember when teachers were our heroes? They were our heroes for a short amount of time, and the other side tends to demonize them now for doing the best they can in a terrible situation. We need to support our public schools, and we need to invest more in public education.
Thank you. Switching gears to healthcare, Given the U.S. Supreme Court Dobbs decision overturning Roe v. Wade, state legislatures are enacting new laws regarding women's reproductive health issues, including access to care and birth control. What measures, if any, do you think the Minnesota Legislature should enact regarding women's reproductive health and abortion? And I believe we start with candidate Wroblewski on this one.
I will always protect and defend women's right to make decisions about their own bodies and their own health care. Government has no place in regulating a woman's health care decisions. Full stop.
Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. As I'm aware, if I believe this is correct, the governor is not up for election. So in order to make any changes going further, it would require a majority of all houses in the governorship. We have a lot of issues going on in Minnesota that we need to solve. We need to spend more time on how we're going to solve the issue why people are paying more money, they're losing their homes, they're ended up not being able to pay, they're going to food banks, our education is suffering. These are things we need to address because they're immediate issues. The abortion issue, or what has been taken in place, was solved. Was just solved, and it's not going to be addressed again. So I like to concentrate on the things that we can work on, and we can, before we start getting caught down in these things that just take up time. Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
Yes, if I may. So he really didn't answer that question until the very end, and what he's going to do, because this is what the Republicans do, and I saw his answers to the Minnesota Citizens Concern for Life questions, and that is he's going to vote the Republican line, and if they get a chance, they will take away a woman's right and freedom to have control over her own body. I don't understand their obsession for that. I think I think women are smarter and stronger, and they can make their own decisions.
Additional rebuttal?
Sorry, I'll try and be more clear from my opponent. What I said is it's not something that can be taken up. We have a lot going on down there, a lot of issues, a lot of crises going on, and we don't need to take a personal issue like this, which is a hot button, and can bog you down from the things getting achieved. We've seen what happens when they get bogged down there. They don't finish in time, things don't get addressed, and at the last minute, they do an omnibus and try to push everything through. So that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Another healthcare question. What can the legislature do to improve and enhance resources for mental health care? And I believe we start with candidate Johnson.
That question, I just actually received an email from somebody that wanted to talk to me about the issues that they're seeing down there, especially with youth mental care right now. And a lot of it goes back to what happened with the schools and how it changed a lot of thinking for people. We have a crisis. Something happened down here at Alina just recently, where somebody came into Alina, and they ended up having a lot of police force showing up because the kid started throwing stuff and breaking stuff. We need to start addressing it. We need to start addressing why it's happening, and we also have to do some more research on it. Am I an expert? No, but what I've always told people is I am willing to sit down and listen to people and what they believe is some of the solutions, and then we can start coming together. Thank you.
And candidate Wroblewski.
Well, we need to invest in mental health crisis systems. And again, you know, people on the other side are always talking about, you know, not paying anymore, not investing in things. This is really important. And I'll tell you, decades ago as a cop, I was involved, you know, we responded to crisis calls all the time. We had a mobile crisis team, a group of Ramsey County social workers who worked side by side and alongside us. We would call them in after we settled down the call, and they would take over. Sometimes we would get called back when they'd found out that the juvenile had been raped, and we would take that call. We worked hand in hand. They loved us being there, especially in those really difficult, kind of more violent crisis calls, and that's what we need to invest in for all of us. The other thing is the gun issue. You know, the Republican side of the aisle, you know, guns are the most, you know, guns in people that are mentally ill, you're going to end up with a death there. I think we need to do a better job of gun control as well.
Okay, and rebuttal.
Thank you. One of the things when I was on the Washington Board of Commissioners, we worked with the Sheriff's Department and also bringing in social workers that are riding along, and we enacted that program, which also got expanded out to Woodbury and other cities. So there is a definite crisis going on. It's putting our law enforcement in danger, and we need to find better solutions. I just don't like the idea that the immediate answer is investing without a plan. Thank you.
Additional rebuttal?
Well, that's exactly kind of the thing I'm talking about, except it was an incredible program, and went for about 3 or 4 years in St. Paul until the funding dropped. I mean, that's state funding for county programs to help us with our mental health crisis. We need to fund it, and you know, sometimes it seems like it's a bad word to talk about investing and funding in mental health crisis and our healthcare system. I will advocate for funding mental health.
Thank you. Switching gears to the environment, what do you plan to do to support safe air, water, and soil for our communities? And we'll start with candidate Wroblewski.
Well, environment is one of my passions. So I took a 25-acre parcel in Afton, and on my own, with my own 2 hands, I restored it to a native woods and prairie. We have solar on our pole barn. You know, the environment in 41A is a gem, and we need to preserve it. We have the St. Croix River, national wild and scenic river, pristine creeks, Valley Creek. The reason we all move out to 41A is because it's a gorgeous place with a beautiful natural environment, and I will do everything I can to preserve and protect it, including lobbying at the state legislature against bills, which I did this spring, to ensure that we are not negatively impacted by things coming down through the legislature.
Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. I grew up in southeastern Minnesota on a farm. Even back in the late 70s, early 80s, we made changes in how we farmed and how so we could protect the land, and both land and water. We low till, also make sure water wasn't rushing away and stop taking the land with it. So I grew up knowing that the environment was important. When I was on the Washington County Board of Commissioners, I also approved when there was options to buy land for land and water legacy. So we were doing a lot of efforts there. I also served on an energy and recycling board, also, and that was working towards a 75% mandate from the state government to divert from landfills. The problem there is the state, again, made a mandate, but then didn't have any way of funding it, so it ended up coming back on to Washington County residents. So I believe there's solutions. We just have to make sure the state is funding and coming up with the right ideas. Thank you.
Rebuttal.
And if I may, so PFAS is not only impacting our groundwater, but it's impacting the surface water, and that includes the wildlife and all our natural areas. And I was just down at the St. Croix, and climate crisis is also impacting it. In Steamboat Park and in Afton Park, the blue-green algae is worse than we have ever seen. We can't even recreate in our own rivers. When I get elected, I'm going to make sure that we protect water, which is our most precious natural resource in our state.
Any additional rebuttal?
No.
All right. We're moving on to the area of public administration. There have been multiple instances in the media where the state departments have not followed rules and processes based on legislation. What can the legislature do to encourage them to comply? An example would include the permitting process for Enbridge's Line 3 and the DNR's violation of federal wildlife management rules, resulting in the withholding of a $22 million federal grant. I believe candidate Johnson, you're first on this one.
Can I back up a little bit? I kind of missed that last part where they were talking about with the DNR.
Okay, these are some examples. The last part was the DNR's violation of federal wildlife management rules, resulting in the withholding of a $22 million federal grant.
Okay, thank you for that. Well, I think there's definitely should be held accountable if they're not following the law and the regulations. It's not the only thing that they're not following down there. One of them is parks. The state is required, when I was working with the county commissioners, I'd be serving on the park board. The state is required to fund a certain percentage of maintenance for the parks, and they're not doing that. And the legislator down at the time says, why aren't we suing ourselves? And we're like, why aren't you? Because what's happening is that's been then being passed on to homeowners through property tax. So regarding those specific things, and I am not aware of those particular examples, if you want to, with the DNR, but they should definitely be investigated. The problem is too many times they can turn their head, not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and I don't think that's right. And somebody needs to hold their feet to the fire if that is going on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the question? It was
I
pretty
can,
fast.
sure. There have been multiple instances in the media where the state departments have not followed rules and processes based on legislation. What can the legislature do to encourage them to comply? 2 examples cited were the permitting process for Enbridge's Line 3 and the DNR's violation of federal wildlife management rules that resulted in the withholding of a $22 million federal grant.
Well, as a state legislature, I would do exactly what I've done as a city council member, as I did as a cop. You know, I will research it. I will go to every single person that needs to know about it. We have to do more than just complain about it. We have to actually put ourselves out, do the hard work, and bring it up the chain, and even go beyond the chain to make sure that these things get fixed. Now, I am not specifically familiar with these things, but for instance, Enbridge, I don't know what the violation is with the DNR. If they weren't following federal environmental standards, that's very disturbing to me. You know, I had some issues with Enbridge going through the wild ricing areas and, you know, drilling underneath the Mississippi River. But we need to hold our state accountable and make sure that they follow the law.
Any rebuttal?
I don't think those are the only examples we can use. I mean, if you want to use the Feed My Children example of where areas are not being followed directly down there, resulting in hundreds of millions of dollars being lost. So I think there's a lot of investigating that needs to be going on down there, and that only happens if we bring balance down. If you have one trifecta in power, there is no incentive or no one there that is digging into that, and that's one of the reasons why I want to bring balance back down there. Thank you.
Additional rebuttal?
Yes. Well, I think in that case, my opponent was talking about, you know, the fraud case. We need to fund regulation and oversight in state agencies. When our state agencies are short personnel to be able to deal with it, that's a problem. But, you know, the Republicans like to talk about deregulation and not funding some of these things. We need to fund these programs, this oversight and regulation.
We're
It's
gonna
just a quick rebuttal, if I'm able to do that.
Well, I think we're only allowed one
Okay.
rebuttal each, I'm sorry. Moving into the area of public safety, many are concerned with gun violence in our communities. What legislation, if any, would you support to meet the need for safe communities? And I believe candidate Wroblewski starts this one.
Well, this is a passion of mine. You know, when we had the bookends of the school shootings in Newtown and Uvalde, it's just really disturbing when politicians refuse to do anything to keep our children safe. I mean, you couldn't even recognize the kids that were stacked up in that closet in Uvalde. So we need to do something. And I'll tell you, the Republicans, after those 2 cops and another cop got shot, the 2 cops in Burnsville and the firefighter were killed, massacred. The Republicans did not vote for a binary trigger ban and to make it a felony to do a straw purchase. Those are 2 things that occurred during that incident. And I find that appalling. So I'm for safe storage, which is what responsible gun owners do. You know, I've been for all of these regulations. And reporting of lost and stolen firearms, that's just a no-brainer.
Candidate Johnson.
If I'm correct, maybe I'm incorrect, but I believe straw purchase is against the law. And that's what she did. So when you say the Republicans did not vote for it, it is the law, and the law was broken. So one of the important things is we need to start prosecuting the actual gun laws that are being broke. Right now, we have too much time being spent by some county attorneys trying to figure out how to get people out of jail instead of actually enforcing and making sure they go to jail. And it's frustrating law enforcement. So I believe we need to go back and we need to, A, start enforcing, but also make sure that it's not a bad thing to start teaching kids how guns work. We go back. I grew up working with, and I took firearm safety just along with my kids. We need to go back to teaching what guns are for. They're not there for violence, and they're not what games do, video games. Thank you.
Rebuttal?
Certainly. That straw purchase, the penalty was a gross misdemeanor. That's as much as they could charge that woman with. And the Democratic-led legislature was making the penalty a felony, and the Republicans voted against it. It just makes no sense. And yes, I own guns, and I think it's important that you're trained in the safe use of them. I just don't understand why you have assault weapons, military-style assault weapons that are killing cops and killing our children allowed on the streets.
Additional rebuttal?
Don't need one. Thank you.
All righty. Switching gears now, staying in the area of public safety, what measures would you put in place as the state rolls out the legalization of marijuana? And we're starting with candidate Johnson, I'm sorry.
If or when, you said?
When the state rolls it out, yes.
Well, hopefully the state has started thinking about what they should be doing, because that's supposed to be coming up here pretty quickly. I know they keep delaying and trying to figure out how they're going to do it, which is no surprise. But it's going to be very tough. Law enforcement is not looking forward to it. It's because and I can tell you businesses are not looking forward to it. So what actions are we going to be putting in place? Well, I guess if you want to go and say the same actions for marijuana that is played for driving drunk. You know, if you're driving high, that's a crime. As far as the other stuff, they're making it legal, so it's a legal drug. So I guess I would look to see some ideas for it. Again, I'm not going to say up here I have an answer for every solution out there. I'm just out there willing to talk to people who do have solutions.
Candidate Wroblewski?
Sure. So the one thing that I'd hope that we would do is, again, provide additional funding and training to police officers, because what we're going to need are more drug recognition experts, or DREs. It is more difficult to deal with somebody who's impaired from that kind of, from marijuana, as opposed to drinking, where you can just do a breathalyzer. So we need to do that. And the other thing, I think, for minors, just like cigarettes or alcohol, we need to make sure that we do those checks on the sale of these substances to juveniles.
Rebuttal?
Thank you. And I guess what I would just like to add to that is I'm hoping within the taxes that they're going to be putting on sale of marijuana, that they are going to use some of that funds for training and for law enforcement. And I don't know what their plans are to spend all that money that's going to be made, but I hope that is something that where they are going to be investing in.
Additional rebuttal?
I believe that is part of the program.
Okay, thank you. We're switching gears to the category of housing. The housing crisis is being impacted by corporations buying houses and putting them up for rent. This practice reduces the number of houses available for individuals to buy. What are your thoughts on a solution to this problem? And candidate Wroblewski, you'll start us out on this one.
Well, in Afton, we face that problem head on. So they're called short-term rentals. And that's exactly what they do. They raise everybody's market values, and then our property taxes go up, and then we have, you have the potential of having parties, and what you do is you don't have, a resident that's part of the community contributing and being a good neighbor. So we put a moratorium on short-term rentals in Afton because of this problem. A lot of cities have eliminated short-term rentals or made it much more where the person has to be living in the house, very much limiting it. That includes, I believe, big cities like New York. I know Grand Marais is looking at that. It's been a real problem. So we need to let local governments address that head on.
Candidate Johnson.
I don't think corporations coming in and buying homes are the only reason that's happening. In fact, when the homes were going under and many homes were being abandoned. They came in. I know a lot of people who are buying homes and turning them into rentals or flipping and turning them into very nice homes. So there is a purpose for them. Also, but I do think the reason that the housing is going up and working with the different contractors is the fact that, example, the state of Minnesota just changed, added another 1% sales tax. That goes on building material. Local entities are putting more sales tax on it. You're creating material that is more expensive. You're putting more taxes onto it. So you're making housing more and more expensive to move into. And it's even making it hard for, once they get into a home, to stay in their homes. So there is a lot of what the government is doing that's increasing the cost of pricing beyond what corporations coming in and buying them.
And any rebuttal?
I'll just say I thought we were talking about short-term rentals, and again, I think the local governments should be able to restrict them.
Anything else?
Nope.
Moving into the area of equity, what legislation, if any, would you support to address racial and ethnic disparities in Minnesota? And we'll start with candidate Johnson on that one.
It's always a tough one. And I know when I was at Washington County, we were definitely looking into that. One of the things we did at Washington County is bringing in red lines and making sure that there was different homes that were still, and the term may be wrong, but the term, a lot of home mortgages said people couldn't buy in their certain, and we made sure that working with the U.S.A, we took care of that. We need to make sure there is equity out there. We need to make sure that everybody has a chance. There's a lot of work going out there. There's been a lot of money spent on it. There's a lot of work to be done. Again, I felt that I'm not the expert on it. I haven't gone to school. I haven't done all the studying. So basically, I would listen to these experts that have come in and talked to us and seen what kind of plan that comes up and what kind of solutions have been successful throughout the country. Thank you.
And candidate Wroblewski.
Well, racial and ethnic equity, where we start is at the schools. And again, I will reiterate, we need to continue to fund our public schools and it's an investment. That's where, if we're talking about English as a second language, I mean, our schools are really equipped to deal with that, but we need to support them. Housing prices, affordable housing, rentals in our district, hard to come by. The market values and the property increases, we just don't have affordable housing. We have a manufactured home community in Lake Elmo. That's the closest thing we come to. And it's nearly $1,000 to rent that little green space, and you have to own the mobile home. So we need to work on that as well.
Time is up on that one.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you. Any rebuttal?
No, thank you.
All righty. Another question in the area of equity. What policies would you support to reduce the number of hate crimes? And I believe candidate Wroblewski starts with this one.
Well, I've been with my wife, Jen, for 18 years. I got married when we could finally get married in 2013. And I just think we need to stop the divisive rhetoric. I think we need to stop demonizing people, especially trans kids, and let people be who they are and let people love who they love. When I was a coach at Johnson High School, I did that while I was a cop. They had unisex bathrooms. All they did was take out walls and have a common area for hand washing and provided privacy stalls. This is 20 years ago, folks. Privacy stalls for everybody. I mean, it's just common sense. It's not that difficult, and we need to support these kids and everybody.
Candidate Johnson.
Well, first of all, I think a hate crime is a crime. Also, I'm assuming there has been policies put in place down at the Capitol before now to address it. If there isn't, then shame on them. But before I stood up here and start saying that I have new policies that I can put in place, I think we should go back down there and find out, A, have they established policies? B, how have the policies worked? And start examining them. Because I think the last thing, and that's what we keep doing with down there, and whether it's for guns or anything else, is let's add a new one. Let's add a new policy. Let's add a new law without actually examining what's happening before. Let's invest. Let's spend more money. So before I'm going to sit up here and say I have new policies to suggest, I think we should get down there and start looking at the policies that are already in place and seeing if they're working or not. And if they're not working, why aren't they working? And then start thinking about how we can improve them. Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
Well, I'll just say back to the equity question, I think we need to be united. I think we need to respect everybody's individual choices and decisions, and it's a matter of freedom and liberty. And, you know, let's stop the name calling and the dividing and the hatred.
Additional rebuttal? Okay, our next area is multi-issue bills. At the very end of the session, multiple topics seem to be rolled into huge omnibus bills with no time to be appropriately evaluated by the voting public or even many legislators. What are your thoughts on this practice? And we'll start with candidate Johnson.
I think it's terrible to just flat out put that. And I think what it is, if I watch down there, how much time is spent on issues that should not be, that are taking up time. You go down there during a budget year, you take care of the budget. You go down there to a year, then you have the year that it's also working with bonding and stuff like that, and that's when you can do it. What's happening is so much time is being spent discussing, trying to come up with bills, putting out bills. One of the things that I was told that I should never go down there, that a predecessor used to go down there, is the number of bills you put forward does not tell people how you are working. It's the number of bills that actually get acted on that are what people are looking for. So we need to get down there and streamline it, get down there and make sure we're not just grandstanding, and we are actually have enough time to do all this stuff. Just stop waiting till the last minute and then having to push everything together.
Any rebuttal?
Well, yeah, so I'm not a fan of large bills that people don't have the time to read. But obstruction and delays and filibusters during the session that lead to a point where we're racing to the finish line are just as big a problem, maybe even bigger. So we need to do the work of the people without those delays, work in committee, and yeah, have more bills that are more specifically tied to a specific topic. So I agree with that.
I'm sorry, any rebuttal?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We're moving into the area of childcare now. A barrier to workforce participation is the availability and affordability of childcare. What, if anything, is the legislature's role in addressing this situation? And we'll be starting with candidate Wroblewski.
Well, again, the legislature's role is to invest and incentivize more child care centers and the training of child care workers. It's a real problem. There's a lottery system going on in the Lake Elmo area. You can't even find child care centers, and even if you have the money, you may not be able to get in. So, I mean, that's something that the state has to take on. So I'm all for, again, and I'm not, you know, within our budget, prioritizing investing and incentivizing childcare and the training of childcare workers.
Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. It's yeah, it's very hard to find childcare. I have employees that have told me nightmares. And one of the things is people don't know, but the state makes the rules for childcare. They pass it on to the county to enforce. And so a lot of people think it's the county being hard on them and all the rules are being made down there. So it's both the combination of being able to afford it, but also the amount of laws and the amount of hoops that they're having to run through. Childcare is evolving. I'm seeing childcare is no longer just bringing them in and let them play. It involves education. I'm seeing some wonderful childcare going on. It's almost like preschool. People are making tough choices. whether they're going to work or whether they're going to be able to send their kids to childcare, and which costs them less. I think that more investment needs to be in childcare. We have to find out why more people are not getting involved. We also look at the laws and are they realistic, and the expectations are being put on them. Thank you.
Any rebuttal?
I'll just say that our kids are very important, and we shouldn't shortcut in terms of regulation or quality of our child care.
Final comment?
That's a true statement, but I think you can also go overboard, and I think we need to start talking to the care providers themselves and find out why are they not doing it? Why are they actually risking staying unlicensed to do it? I've heard the stories, and we need to start looking at that and not just regulating because for the sake of regulating, but actually get them more involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next area is partisan division. How would you work across the aisle to ensure that both parties work together effectively to address the needs of all Minnesotans? And Candidate Johnson will start us out on that one.
Thank you. Well, this is where my previous role, not only with the city, but the county commissioner as being a nonpartisan. I was down at the Capitol a number of times before they shut it down. During the pandemic, I was out in Washington many times. We went out there talking to both the Republicans and Democrats with the basic idea serving the community. I gained the reputation of being able to talk to both sides. And in fact, the Democrats loved talking to me, even though they knew I was technically a Republican, because I was somebody that would sit down and talk to them and be able to work with the other side. I think it's possible. We all know that when you go down there to do a bill, unless you hold both chambers, you're going to have somebody that signs on to you that's also from the opposite side. So working together, being reasonable, not being totally partisan, but actually working together and communicating is how we address that. And I believe my record shows I have been able to do that.
And Candidate Wroblewski.
So I was elected unopposed twice. My second time I was elected unopposed at the Afton City Council, and I am the ward council member for the most conservative ward in our city. Of course, it's nonpartisan, but nowadays people know your political bent. They even ask for it, and I have been part of a masterful job at our city council of working in a nonpartisan fashion to get things done for our community. There are people with Trump signs that have my lawn signs on them. I think that says something. I've also worked as a Democrat in a pretty Republican-leaning profession. So I'm a person who will reach across the aisle, and I'm not just going to talk to people from the other party. I'm going to work with them. I'm going to listen to them, and I hope there are people of goodwill on the other side that will work with me.
Any rebuttal?
No, thank you.
Okay, that brings us to what will be our final question for the evening. It's in the area of elections. Do you support full disclosure of political contributors, including PACs? What changes, if any, in campaign financing laws would you support? And we'll be starting with Candidate Wroblewski.
Yeah, I believe in full disclosure and transparency in our politics. In Minnesota, we have a really good campaign finance system, possibly the best in the nation. I love our PCR program. If it were up to me, we'd have limits on all of our political campaigning, and including limits of how long the campaign season is. I support the PCR program is going to be, I believe, online, so we won't be wasting time with getting refunds through the mail. And yeah, there's no place except transparency and full disclosure in our politics.
Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. As far as full disclosure, yes, it actually happens in Minnesota. Minnesota is one of the tougher states as far as the laws. I know PACs need to report, or you need to report in your campaign financing. But I believe the rules and regulations should be the same. I believe, if unions should have a limit, if PACs have limits, I believe both sides, while they get the funds, should be fair. I believe that Minnesota does have a good system and actually a very transparent system. I'm learning and filing for a partisan. It's totally different than nonpartisan, so you find out how much more strict it is and how much the rules are. So I believe that it is very clear and transparent right now.
Thank you. Any rebuttal?
Yes, I just want to make it clear that any union money is PAC money. It's seen as the same thing, just like individual donations. There's a limit to it, and there's a limit to the PAC money, and that includes any union funds.
Okay, actually, there is one more question. It also deals with the area of elections. As a member of the legislature, what measures, if any, would you support to reinforce or ensure voter confidence in our elections? And Candidate Johnson.
Thank you. Well, we are fortunate in Minnesota that we have very good elections. And working with the county, I was on the canvassing board whenever there was an election. And if you serve on that, if you're not part of that particular election. So we had the chance to audit. We had a chance to examine any ballot we wanted to, despite sound. So I think I think we have very good integrity in Minnesota with elections. The only thing that I am concerned about is the mail-in ballots. It's the only one, because the post office is suffering. And if you're saying it isn't, you're not mailing enough. And so that's the one wild card that I hear a lot of people at the doors saying they're concerned about, and why they're going actually in, whether it's early balloting or whatever, and handing in their ballot because they're concerned about the ballots not being delivered or not being received.
And Candidate Wroblewski.
I think we do have an incredible election system. I was an election judge. I clearly can't do it when I'm on the ballot. But it's an incredible system. We have paper ballots as well as the computer ballots, so we have a paper backup. And in terms of the mail ballots, you can check to make sure that, you should do it early enough. And you can check on the Secretary of State's website to make sure that your ballot actually was received. So you can even be assured of that. I would just recommend that you do it early. Personally, the in-person voting or early voting is the way to go for me. So yeah, rest assured, Minnesotans, I think our Secretary of State, Steve Simon, is doing a great job. Joan Grow did a great job, and we're lucky to live in a state with such great election integrity.
Any rebuttal?
Nothing to add to that.
Okay, well, that brings us to our closing statements, and we'll have 1 minute closing statements, starting with the candidate Wroblewski.
Well, thank you. I'm Lucia Wroblewski, and I'm the Democrat running for State House. I have served and protected the communities I've lived in as a St. Paul cop for 28.5 years, and for a decade as a twice-elected Afton City Council member and a former planning commissioner. All my life, I've worked with people of all backgrounds and political beliefs. I was reelected without opposition to the most conservative ward in Afton, and I'm a lifelong Democrat who worked my entire career alongside many Republicans. Politics had no place in us having each other's backs on the street. My message in closing is for Democrats, independents, and Republicans alike. As a nation and state, we must not regress. We need to move forward out of this divisive negative us versus them paradigm. We have serious issues facing our state, and we need to elect serious people who will work together to address these problems to improve the lives of all Minnesotans. If you elect me, that's what you'll get, a serious person working hard for you no matter your party, someone with a proven track record who cares about you and who'll go to the mat for you. I'm Lucia Wroblewski, and I'm asking for your vote on November 5th.
Candidate Johnson.
I'd like to thank again the League of Women Voters for the candidate forum. Thank you for everyone that watched today. I'm Wayne Johnson. I'm a Republican candidate for 41A. As a resident of Cottage Grove for 26 years and owner of 2 service-related businesses, I know what it takes to serve. I've also been elected for two different positions, so I have a lot of service. I've been volunteered in the community. I am looking for your vote to bring balance down. That is what is important. We all know in order for a successful community, you need to have balance. Too much power in one hand is where we are at right now, and that is causing the deficits, that is causing the crises we have in line. I believe in law enforcement, and the one thing that I keep hearing the DFL not say they're willing to invest in is in law enforcement, and I believe that's where it needs to be spent. You cannot defund something you want to fix. So I would asking for your vote. I want to get down there to St. Paul, represent the whole community. Thank you.
And that concludes our forum for the candidates running for the Minnesota House of Representatives, District 41A. I want to thank our candidates, Johnson and Wroblewski, for participating this evening, and now Andrea will provide our closing comments.
I'd also like to thank the candidates for choosing to run for office and their participation in this evening's forum. Thank you to all those of you who viewed the forum and those who view the recording between now and the election. This is the first of 6 candidate forums that the League of Women Voters Woodbury Cottage Grove area will be hosting this September. This is one of our most important services to our community. Last year, we had nearly 5,000 views of our forums. Our next forums will be this evening, coming up at 8:15, Cottage Grove City Council. Minnesota House Districts 47A and 47B and Woodbury City Council will be on Thursday, September 12th, starting at 7 p.m. And then House District 53B and Newport City Council will be on Tuesday, September 17th, starting at 7 p.m. The forums are available to watch through the South Washington County Telecommunications Commission. They will be broadcast live and then periodically replayed on Comcast Channel 18 and HD Channel 859, and also available anytime online. You can find it at swctc.org or their YouTube channel. We also strongly encourage submitting questions on our website ahead of time. That's at lwvwcg.org. Please make every effort to become informed about candidates running for all offices on this year's ballot. And most importantly, get out and vote. We will now take a brief break before our second candidate forum this evening. Thank you.